Welcome back to Midnight Oil, everyone. I'm your host, Keegan, joined with,
Tab.
and today we are doing the mischievous topic of the Salem Witch Trials. Now, I'm not going to go super into it as we already did in the pre-show. Go check it out. But we are releasing another episode every week. It's going to be a little shorter, probably between the 30-minute and 45-minute mark, sometimes even shorter than that. But it's going to kind of allude to what the main episode is going to be. But we're not going to exactly tell you sometimes. We want to have a
Yeah.
little sense of mystery in there. So we just like doing what we're doing. Tab said, you know what? I can take this further. And Tab's been homing it up with the editing tools. So they were like, I could do more. And I said, why not? So we are releasing another episode every week. I want to say it's going to be on Wednesdays, but that could change. That's just what I'm thinking right now. But yeah, Tab, we're doing Salem Witch Trials now.
Yeah. How
Do you
exciting.
do you think that the difference between the Salem Witch Trials and the European Witch Trials are significant enough to be categorized separately, or do you think that they could be just lugged into the same topic?
So, I think if we're going based on like a general overview, they could probably be lugged into the same topic. But the Salem Witch Trials are what's more wide known. So, that's why they're separated.
Mm,
Because they both have the general overview of like they targeted women. Usually, we learned in the European witch trials they kind of went for children and men too in some cases, but they mainly targeted women. It was mainly based on religion and politics.
yeah.
So they all have the same kind of reasons, I guess.
And as I said in the pre-show, I usually make just a lot of jokes, kind of like comedic relief sometimes. I'll probably be doing a little bit less of that in this episode just because when we did the European witch trials, it was really messed up. So I don't want like any ill will or any of that. And yeah, I think it's actually terrible what some of these people went through just because they had differing opinions.
Yeah. And the way
So
that the Salem witch trials started it was wild, to be honest.
yeah, and do you think we already talked about it a little bit, but do you think the average person today would be considered a witch back then?
Probably, yeah. There's a lot of people with different beliefs nowadays, so for sure. Because it was
Yeah.
literally anybody that was different, anybody that was poor, anybody that didn't like who was in charge. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, basically you were screwed. Like
Yeah,
it was GG's.
goofy.
But yeah, so walk us through. What are witches? What are these witch trials? Were they like competing? Like what's going on?
Yeah, so the at least the Salem witch trials, it was a series of prosecution and executions that took place in 1692 in colonial Massachusetts. So these witches they were kind of just people who were thought to be like interfering with other people, at least in this case. Because it started when a group of young girls, including Betty Paris and Abigail Williams, began exhibiting strange and erratic behavior. They accused several women of witchcraft, claiming these individuals had bewitched them. And that kind of leads us into who the first three accused witches were.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, who were these people? Were they just random people? Were they just people that, they didn't agree with what was going on at the time? Like, how does it all like what's happening
So,
basically?
just reading a little brief, like, of who these people were and what they did, it kind of just makes me think that the group of young girls that were accusing people were kind of just like either one doing it as like a joke or trying to act out or whatever, or two, they didn't. like these people. And they were just like, yeah, get them out of here. Because
Mm.
the first one, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Tituba. She was an enslaved woman in the household of Reverend Samuel Paris, which that'll tell you coming from Betty Paris. So she probably didn't like this lady.
Yeah.
And then there was Sarah Good. She was a homeless beggar. And then Sarah Osborne. She was just an elderly woman who really didn't go to church.
No, that's
Yeah.
terrible.
And so it was just like, oh yeah, she doesn't go to church. Must be a witch. I
That's
don't like.
terrible.
How do you just believe that? It's just crazy. But their marginalized social status made them really easy targets for accusations. Obviously, I mean, all women. One was an enslaved lady to the reverend. One was homeless, and one was an old lady. So they were just
These poor
really
people.
easy to come for.
And
Yeah.
they didn't really even do anything wrong. They just,
No,
well,
yeah.
that we know of. It's mostly just innocent people who unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
got kind of screwed because of where they were located and they didn't agree with what was happening, basically.
Yeah.
Really sad.
So, the tuba, she was one of the first ones. And apparently she gave like a really interesting like testimony.
Like it's documented?
I think so.
That's,
I'm trying to
that's kind of
find like
impressive.
where it's documented. Oh. So, she cared for the Paris children and the Paris daughter, which I assume was Betty, and the niece were the first girls who began showing strange symptoms in 1692. Apparently, the girls have been playing a fortune telling game that involved dropping an egg white into a glass of water. Supposedly, the form of the egg white took in the water could help predict whom the girls would marry and show the shapes of their future lives. After the girls
Hmm.
saw a coffin in one of the glasses, they began barking like dogs, babbling and crying hysterically.
That's
Yeah.
insane. So they were just like kind of tweaking out.
Yeah. Interesting. So apparently Tituba, I'm gonna say Tituba.
Tortuga.
I have no idea. So she had nothing to do with the whole fortune telling thing, which was a grave sin in the Puritan religion. So we're looking at Puritans when we're talking about the Salem Witch Trials. So anybody that disagreed with the Puritan worldview was most likely going to be accused. But anyways, I digress. Tituba, she tried to help them by baking like a witch cake. It was made of rye meal and urine, and then she fed it to the girls.
Hmm. Amazing.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Oh
And
my
so,
god.
so the fucking reverend, right? He had already begun like praying over them and fasting, and I think making them fast because he thought that the girls were possessed. And he was so fucking mad when he heard that Tutuba fed them cake. And so he beat her in an attempt to get her to confess that, witchcraft was the reason behind the girls' odd behavior. And she did confess. And she
Hmm.
embellished her confession with an embroidered tale of how she had been told to serve the devil. And she and the girls rode on sticks, and she confessed a black dog told her to hurt the children. And that sparked hysteria, of course, in Salem. So like that's crazy.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So she was basically beat into a confession that like wasn't even true.
Yeah, it looks like she was just kind of just beaten. Like
Mhm.
there's no justifiable reason.
Yeah. And she
That's
was
terrible.
already associated, since she was a person of color, she was associated with voodoo. So they were like,
Mm.
oh yeah, this shit's evil. She's doing voodoo, and she just confessed that she's in works with the devil. And so she was sent to jail. And the
Oh,
Reverend refused to pay her bail.
how nice of the reverend.
Mm-hmm. She finally, like, recanted her statement, though, and said that she made up everything and that her master beat her in an attempt to force a confession. By then, the trials had wound down, and the governor of Massachusetts had ordered the arrest to stop. So she didn't even, like, die, right?
I'm not seeing that she was killed.
Yeah.
Obviously, very long and dead, but
But yeah. Of course now.
yes. But yeah,
That
I
was a long
think
time ago.
I think that she was no she was no longer an accomplice.
Yeah, very much that.
So, okay. So these people there were people being killed.
Yeah.
At least it's not, tens of thousands of people like it was in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that it like this town is like the most well known? Or maybe
Um,
it's I don't think it's the only known, but like it's the most popular.
I want to say because maybe it's more documented in theory, and it's also in America.
Yeah, but like there had to have been more witch trials, right?
Well,
Well, this
yeah.
was also before we were established as a country as well. So
Mm,
maybe documentation just isn't as fruitful, perhaps?
potentially, yeah. I don't know. I'm not too sure why this was.
Subscribe to the Patreon, and we're going to go back in time to the Salem Witch Trials and find out what happened.
Yeah. Just like that one movie that took me 10 minutes to find.
Yeah, and the pre-show tab took like 10 minutes to find a movie. That's funny.
I found it though, and it
That's
was
true.
it was a good movie.
Good movie. Check out the movie recommendation.
Yep, that part.
So, okay, how did it lead, like, what led to the peak of the witch trials, and then how did they end? It looks like it was just 1 year, and then it was done.
Roughly, yeah. So the peak of it stemmed from the initial accusations from the group of girls. And of course, as it would, especially coming after like that confession, people were like, holy shit, witches. That's crazy. So it created, of course, mass hysteria and spiraled way out of control. And the accusations started to include people's neighbors and like friends and even like super respected community members. And so that was like how the peak of it became. And I'm sure it like wrapped up simply because they were like, nah.
Maybe this isn't right.
Yeah. The hysteria began to wane by late 1692 as doubts about the legitimacy of the trials grew. And that can
A
stem
hundred.
to like the fucking evidence that they tried to use in the trials. It was like pure word of mouth type shit. But yeah, Governor William Phipps, responding to increasing skepticism and pressure, prohibited the use of the evidence that was used in trial. And so obviously any other, because the primary evidence that they used was called spectral evidence, and I read a little bit about it, and it's really fucking weird like the way that they can try to use that as evidence. But anyways, we'll get into that here in a little bit. The evidence being spectrum evidence as the main source, they said nah, like you can't use that anymore, so obviously the court cases didn't go anywhere, so they stopped being able to
Mhm.
execute people, basically. Yeah.
Hooray! It's
Mm-hmm.
finally over. But does it say that the people that did execute these quote unquote witches, did they ever see any punishment?
So they ended up having to do like public apologies, and they ended up compensating some of the families of the victims. But as far as that goes, I want to say no. They didn't have to face anything themselves for all of that. They just had to apologize
Wow.
and compensate some
That's
families.
kind of messed up when you
Yeah,
think about it. Like,
very much that.
like very.
Very much that.
I wonder just how the dynamics were in society then. Because you're talking about taking people's lives because they hurt your feelings or, don't agree with your religious views or something.
Yeah. No, very much that. I know that
That's terrible.
it ended up dividing the Salem village, like economically, and there were a lot of family rivalries because of it. And so they had a lot of disputes of land ownership and leadership, and that would often fuel even more accusations. So there was a lot like going on. Salem was going through it back in the day.
Yeah, and they, like you said, they literally, all they did was like, hey, you need to go
Mm-hmm.
apologize because this wasn't cool. Like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like, they should have like had the death penalty because that's also equally as fucked up. But like, you put them in jail? Did jail not exist then? Like what?
No, they did because like the people that were accused were jailed.
Yeah, so like, what the fuck? You murdered people.
Mm-hmm. And the apologies were only really issued by like some key figures, which of course the judge that was like saying guilty of witchcraft. The judge, his name was Samuel Sewall.
That name sounds familiar, believe it or not.
Probably, yeah. You've probably watched things loosely based on the Salem Witch Trials.
That would make sense.
Because he's like the most common known name of like, he was the one saying guilty and getting these poor
Guilty.
people killed.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
This whole thing is just messed up because you're talking, I've kind of said this already, but literally innocent people just going about their lives who say, I don't agree. And you're like, well, time for death. Like,
Mm-hmm.
huh?
Very much that, yeah.
Oh, man. That's terrible. It's actually just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we have any of the like transcriptions? Do we have a transcript of any of these apologies? Is that a thing?
I don't know.
That would
Let
be
me
kind
see.
of interesting if we could find one of those, maybe. Because
George Sewall apology.
I just want to know, man. What was life like back then? It was so bad that you had to execute people.
I don't know. I think most of them were just literally based on like the Puritan worldview because they believed in like the devil literally and his ability to grant powers to witches in exchange for loyalty. So they were like, "Oh yeah, for fucking sure." Especially when she told her story that she made a deal with the devil practically. That kind of just she played like right into that. I mean, she was beaten play into that, to be fair.
Yeah, but that's so like crazy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. That's ridiculous. Just everything that happened is terrible.
Very much that.
I
I
just want to
can't.
know why? Like these are your own people. Like what are you thinking?
I'm trying to find his apology letter. There's like pictures of it. Apparently, he like wrote it and read it out to his church whenever he was apologizing.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So he was a man of the church.
That checks.
Yeah.
Okay, so during the Salem witch trials, what was like because you said that it was economically divided. Like what was going on? Because I can't find any information that's like talking about the economy really. It just says that people were split as well as finances.
Yeah.
And that's all
So
I really got.
it was mainly people fighting over like land and like family disputes. So think like Romeo and Juliet's family, basically. But like
Gotcha.
without the love being in the middle. It was just families at war and people wanting more land, that kind of thing.
Bro, if they would have seen Romeo and Juliet, they probably wouldn't have done all of that.
Big
Or not
facts.
Romeo and Juliet, the other one.
A fun thing that
Macbeth.
we yeah. But that's one of the fun things that we actually learned is that what's his name? William Shakespeare was alive during this like time.
Yeah! Did you guys know that William Shakespeare was literally alive during the time of the witch trials? That's crazy to me. That may not like be a shocker to anyone else, but I didn't think those things were like the same time at
Mm-hmm.
all.
I mean, he died before the Salem witch trials, but he was alive during the European one. So, even more so, the people of Salem had the option to read or go see Macbeth.
That's so bonkers to me.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so bonkers, bro.
But imagine they thought Macbeth was like based on true story. Was it? What even is Macbeth about? I just know that it's
Um,
about with witches.
that's all I really know. I was more we read Romeo and Juliet, but we never read Macbeth. And I don't know
I know that was always
really.
kind of banned, because Macbeth was like, at least in theater culture, you're not supposed to say that on stage.
Well, that and there was some religious ties. I think that's the main reason that it was banned, but I also have no idea. I might
No,
just be
fair.
talking out of my ass.
Macbeth wasn't a woman. I swear I thought Macbeth was a woman, but apparently he was actually
Oh, no.
the Scottish general that receives a prophecy from a trio of witches that one day he will become the King of Scotland.
Thus beginning the European witch trials.
Yeah. That's insane. I swear this whole time I thought Macbeth was like one of the witches.
No.
Yo.
That's so funny.
I can no longer say that I'm a theater kid.
Well, okay. In reality, how many people have actually read it, right?
I feel like if you claim theater kid, then like you probably know of Macbeth and like the
Yeah.
general plot of Macbeth in theory.
You're right.
I mean,
So, have you found a timeline yet? I've not been able to find something that says this happened this day, this day, this day. I just kind of see like these things happen.
not exactly, no.
I just want to know how these things were documented because
I want to say I think I just found the apology letter.
no, that's crazy.
I think
They did the Logan Paul apology.
it's kind of like a group apology, and they all signed it.
Hmm.
But I don't see Samuel Sewell's apology. Oh, this was the jury apology rather than Samuel's. So Samuel apologized first, and then the jury apologized afterwards, and they're basically just saying like, "Hey, I'm sorry. We're sorry. We were sadly deluded and very mistaken." That is insane that they can just be like, "Hey, I'm sorry," and that's the end of it. Basically, it's saying like, "Hey, we shouldn't let our lives be ruled by emotion. My bad.
Hmm.
Please forgive us." They do ask for forgiveness at the very end of the letter too. I think
Oh.
that's insane that you would even try to do that.
Yeah, like you're basically I mean, they're not are they even pleading? There was no court case, right?
Mm-mm.
They were just like, "Hey, you have to apologize," and they said, "Okay."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bonkers.
Yep. Goofy for that one. Good try though.
And then all those people got to live their lives.
Yep.
That's goofy.
Versus the 20 people that were executed.
Yep.
200 people were accused total, but only, at least it says here that only 20 people were executed. 19 by hanging, and one, Giles Corey, who was pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea of whether he was guilty or innocent. I think that's crazy.
Is there a list of people's names? And they're like, I just wonder if any of it was like racially motivated, gender motivated. You know what I mean?
So it doesn't say exactly, but I can assume yes, all of those reasons is probably why they were targeted.
In the European ones, right? They were talking about how it was literally all ages, all sexes, all. It was a very diverse amount of 25,000 people. So I was just curious.
So I just found a timeline of a
Yay.
lot of people. Okay, so the first executed on June 10th, 1692, was Bridget Bishop. She was twice widowed, she was a tavern owner, and she was known to be outspoken and have unconventional behavior. She was accused of
Mm.
bewitching several people and was the first person tried and executed. And then we get into Sarah Good. So on July 19th, 1692, there was 5 people executed. Sarah Good, she was a poor homeless woman. Sarah was disliked by many and had a reputation for begging. Her defiance in court and her low social status made her an easy target. The second one that day was Elizabeth Howe. She was accused of causing harm to others through witchcraft, likely due to jealousy and disputes with the neighbors. So that's where we get into like the family feuds.
Mm-hmm.
The third person executed that day was Susanna Martin, a widow known for her sharp tongue and legal disputes. Susanna was accused after decades of rumors about her being a witch. She probably was a witch. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry, Sarah. Or Susanna, my bad.
No.
I mean, if she was being accused for decades,
True.
rather these people just being accused like same day or day before, let's be real. So there's this one. This was like a really hard hitter was Rebecca Nurse. She was a respected elderly woman. So her accusation shocked a lot of people, and she had strong faith and a pretty decent amount of land that she owned. So obviously she was a target in disputes, which got her goofed.
Goofed is crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, these poor people. All because they had differing opinions. What does it mean bewitching? Like I know what the word means, but like what is the context of them bewitching people?
Probably just like people acting weird.
Mm.
So like basically people putting on a show. But yeah, so the Rebecca Nurse lady, she was mainly accused because she didn't go to church all that often. And I mean, she was an old lady, so like the fuck? Of course she was like, "Man, I really just don't feel like getting up going to church today. My
Does it say
knees
how
hurt."
old?
No. Let me see. Let me take a look and see how old she was.
Let me take a
Let
look.
me just take a peek. She was 71. 71 years old.
Wow, she probably just didn't want to walk around, bro.
Yeah, it's just like my fucking knees hurt today. I'm not going to church. And then everybody was like, "Oh, you didn't go to church today?" Witch! That's a witch!
And nowadays people go to church for a lot less. So
Yeah, fair. But anyways, back to the timeline. Sarah Wilds was the last person that was killed on July 19th. Unalived, my bad. Sarah Sarah had a history of legal trouble and a reputation for being unconventional, which made her a suspect.
how'd they prove it?
Yeah, circling back to that. So they relied on what they called witch marks, which were usually just like moles or unusual like birthmarks or whatever. And they were like, "Oh yeah, that person has a mole right there. Nobody has a mole right there. It's a witch."
That's insane.
Yeah. And they also use something called spectral evidence, which when I looked that up, the comparison that it made was people witnessing that person, not their body, but like them in the spectral realm trying to mess with them. So, for example, guys would have like dreams about people trying to visit them and do things to them. And they would be like, "Yeah, I totally saw this person like astral projecting into my room late at night, trying to convince me to make a deal with the devil. And I said no."
I'm a good churchgoer.
And then they would literally go to trial with that evidence. And yeah. And so that's when Homeboy stepped in and was like, "Nah, spectral evidence, that's like, you're literally just telling like a story."
What?
And so that's why all the cases
It's
dissolved.
crazy that it's all basically like word of mouth.
Mhm.
Like just think about what happens when they find out about gaslighting and lying.
No, literally.
Like it's literally so crazy. We're like these three people said that it happened. Oh well,
Really?
12 life sentences.
Well, to the gallows with you. Bye. Like, what?
Yeah, that's ridiculously crazy.
Oh, yeah. So the what they called it where they hung the people, where it was Gallow Hill.
Gallow Hill is a crazy name.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I want to
man.
say, is Gallow Hill like still a thing? Oh, it is.
Like you can
It's
go
like
there.
it's a museum kind of thing.
Mm.
I want to see pictures of like Gallow Hill. Is it actually a hill? Whoa! It's literally just a rock on top of a hill, I think.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. I kind of want to go.
We should go.
I've always wanted to visit like Salem.
It's not that well, okay. It's not like a quick car. Never mind. It's not that close. I was thinking about logistics. I was like, no, never mind. It's not that close. It's
Is it?
actually not close at all.
Oh, we could totally drive there.
You think so?
I didn't know that that's where Massachusetts was.
Yeah, it's on the East Coast.
I forgot that Massachusetts was even a fucking state. I'll be real with you.
Mm,
I'd be
That's where-
forgetting about it.
that's where Boston is. I can't forget.
Yeah, but like even that, who's Boston? You know what I'm saying?
You're telling me the boss is in?
Well, I hope not. I'm gonna get fired.
No, no.
Fucking weak. But yeah, anyways, back to the timeline, right? So in August 19th. So this spanned over like at least a few months. Because there was one in June, there was a few in July, and now we're in August. And it goes to September, and then they like wrap it up. But August. Oh, so this is when we start getting the guys. George Burroughs, he was accused because he was a former minister at Salem Village. George was accused of being the ringleader of the witches. His physical strength and eloquence in defending himself made him a target for suspicion. So I guess people tried to jump him. That sucks. And then there's Martha Carrier. She was apparently known as the Queen of Hell by her accusers. She had a contentious reputation and was blamed for outbreaks of smallpox.
Wow.
And maybe it, couldn't have attributed back to hygiene routines, but, whatever. Or Martha.
Wow.
And then we get to John Willard. John was a former constable who expressed skepticism about the trials, which, of course, anybody who disagrees is going to be accused. Whoa. This next one is kind of fucking crazy.
Oh.
George Jacobs Sr., he was an elderly man, and he was accused by his fucking granddaughter.
Nah.
Who later recanted. And it was all because of a fucking family feud.
That's terrible.
His granddaughter was like, Grandpa, I didn't like how you didn't give me dessert. You're a witch. Fuck you.
That's crazy, bro.
That probably wasn't like the extent
No,
of
but...
it, but
that's still ridiculous.
Yeah. And then we get to John Proctor. He was a respected farmer who openly criticized the trials. So, again, circling back to everybody that disagrees will be hung. Interesting. And then there is Martha Corey. She was critical of the trials and expressed disbelief in witchcraft. She was a little too independent for their liking. So they were like, okay, well, she's saying she doesn't believe in witches, and she's an independent woman. Fuck you. You're dead, brother.
Yeah, execution.
Yeah. And then we get to Mary Eastie. Mary, which was Rebecca Nurse's sister, which is the older lady, she was accused due to family connections and some long-standing grudges. So, of course, the sister of a witch also had to be a witch, because why not?
And these are all people that ended up getting executed, correct?
Yes. These are all the people that ended up being hung.
Wow.
Yep. And then we hit Anne Pudeeter. She was a wealthy widow and was accused of using witchcraft to harm others, likely due to her wealth and independence. And then we have Alice Parker. Little is known about her case, but her accusations stem from personal animosities. Mary Parker. Mary's identity may have been confused with another woman's, but she was still convicted and unalived. Wilmot Red, known for her sharp tongue and disagreements with her neighbors. Anybody who disagrees dies. Margaret Scott, she was a poor widow. She was accused of using witchcraft to harm others, likely out of prejudice against her low status. There was Samuel Wardwell. Samuel confessed under pressure, but later recanted. His change of stance likely sealed his fate. Jesus Christ. Abigail Faulkner Sr. Abigail was accused after a family feud and a series of misfortunes. And then Giles Corey, he was accused, along with his wife, Martha Corey. He refused to plead to protect his estate, and this is the only death that was different. He was pressed between like two hard rocks. So there was a rock base, and then he was laid down, and then they put another like rock on top of him, and then they started piling rocks on top of like the other rock base. Wow. So the rock that he was laying on was roughly the same size as his body, and the big rock that was laid on top of him was also the same size as his body. So his whole body was just crushed by rocks.
That sounds so painful.
And that was on September 19th, 1692. So he died before, it looks like his wife did. And I assume that's just because he was uncooperative. And then there were a few others that just simply died in prison, awaiting trial or execution. But those weren't, like, necessarily roped in with like the execution. So, anyways, moral of the story is that they were accused for social and religious differences. So, anybody that challenged authority or didn't conform to Puritan norms were a target. If anybody had any type of personal grudges towards you, it's over for you. And that includes land, money, or like your reputation or whatever. And then anybody that could see or that could be perceived as suspicious because of all of the mass hysteria and fear of the devil and witchcraft back in that day.
Wow.
Yep.
That's so
So that was
terrible.
a lot going on there.
I just want to know, like, what the fuck? Like, it's like time is so much different now, but could you imagine where you could just say, hey, these three people and we saw this person not going to church for like 2 months, and we also saw them levitating off of the ground? And then they're like, go to trial. And and then they're like, okay, we need you to levitate off of the ground. And then they're like, no, I can't. Like, I can't do that. What are you talking about? And they're like,
You're lying.
that's not compelling enough. You're lying. You need to be executed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's just crazy. And the fact that it all. So I switched to reading about like the main accusers. So the group that started it all, tying in like Betty Paris and Abigail Williams, they were quite literally all, I think, under the age of 20.
Wow.
So it was literally teenagers.
They're just trying to be progressive.
So, yeah.
Not even that. They just don't agree.
They were all kind of accused of putting on like an act. Because, okay, so it looks like Betty was 9 years old, Abigail Williams was 11, Ann Putman was 12.
12 years old.
Yeah. Elizabeth Hubbard was 17. Mary Walcott was 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Mercy Lewis, 19. Mary Warren, 20. And they all had like the names that I had mentioned that were like executed, they all ended up testifying.
And they were all just like, not, hey, you're lying. Were there any people that were. I haven't found a testimony where they were like, oh, this person probably isn't a witch. Like, the conviction rate seems really high.
Yeah, I think it said like 200 or something. Abigail alone accused 57 people.
That's so crazy. That's like the boy who cried wolf. Like, why would you even believe that person?
Ann Putman testified against 60 people. That
Wow.
is so fucking insane. And it even says like Mary Walcott. Of the accused witches Walcott testified against, 16 were executed and one, Giles Corey, was pressed to death. And then another died in jail.
I went to a Renaissance festival where they had like old means of like execution, and some of them are actually terrible. Like the Iron Maiden is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. We should do an episode on, maybe that can be one of our bonus episodes.
I agree.
Because the one with the rat, where the rat has to like burrow into you.
Yeah, they like put you in this little case or hole, and they don't let you out until you're dead after the rat has like made its way inside of you and eaten parts of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know the names of some of them, like by their name.
I have
But
no
like
idea.
some of them were really bad. Like the rack, that one is terrible. You have like being crushed by an elephant. You have getting boiled to death.
Mm-hmm.
The rat torture is just terrifying. That I would be like, this is terrible.
Yeah. So interestingly
What
enough,
do you even do? Like, that's so bad. Like, I can't imagine being in a situation where against your will you're just being executed. That's terrible.
yeah, very much that.
I don't know.
So I looked up some like maybe not super talked about facts about the Salem Witch Trials. The first one was that Tituba, it was likely linked to slavery. I mean, of course, because they thought that she was linked to voodoo. But something like interesting that I literally didn't find in any of the other websites that I looked like. It's believed that her confession, even though that she like got beat into it, it was like very unusual for them to actually like confess and make up a whole story like that. And so it's believed that it saved her life because she wasn't executed. She was instead sold back into slavery. So, like, if we just zoom out and look at that from like a broader perspective, so she was enslaved to Reverend Paris, accused of witchcraft, and jailed, awaiting her trial because of her confession. She didn't get executed, which, like, thank God, hallelujah. Instead, she was released and sold back into slavery. Like, what the fuck? That's fucked up. Genuinely.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Very
Man.
genuinely fucked up.
This is fucking crazy, man.
Mm-hmm.
This is just so sad. I haven't
Yeah.
been talking a bunch because I'm like, it's just so messed up. Like, not being able to do anything against your will. People just saying, hey, basically, they either don't like you or think you're crazy, and then you just die.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just not, it's not fair. Like, I
Yeah.
know it's like life's not fair, but that's crazy. Especially a 12-year-old.
Yeah, very much that. By, like, kids
Man.
saying these things. Kids have
Yeah.
some fucking crazy imaginations, dude.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever go back there.
I have no idea.
Back in the day.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, it also says here that the trials weren't limited to Salem. So the Salem village is the most famous location, but the accusations actually spread to neighboring towns such as Andover, Ipswich, and Topsfield. Andover saw the most confessions after a wave of fear gripped the town.
Hmm.
Interesting.
It
And
sounds like there was just a bunch of like fear tactics going on to prevent people from doing this, but
yeah,
man, ugh.
there were a lot of the accusations actually came from anybody that was a landowner that like owned a significant amount of land, or specifically widows with a significant amount of property. They became targets because people could benefit from their downfall.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then it looks like women were disproportionately targeted, like roughly 80-ish%. Accusations often stemmed from perceived violations of Puritan gender norms. So that would include like anybody that was independent, anybody that could stand up for themselves, or anybody that had wealth.
That's bonkers.
Yep.
Damn. So it was just so it was just not fair at all. Like actually.
Yeah. And another interesting thing that ties into some of the motives that I didn't see anywhere else. So it seems like the two people that kind of started it all obviously were related to Reverend Paris, which he was already a controversial figure in Salem. It doesn't necessarily say why, but it seems as if the trials helped him kind of consolidate power in the village by eliminating all of his rivals. So he was kind of just like
What?
going along with it because he was like, yeah, this is going to get me a lot of power to stand in here and I can hang it over the village because all of my rivals are gone. Peace out.
Wow.
Yeah.
How like actually shitty?
No, wait. Hold on. It gets even worse. Okay.
No.
So, to the people that like, when they hear about like humans dying, they're like, oh, okay, whatever. But then when they hear about animals dying, they're like, oh, what the fuck? What the
Yeah.
fuck? Apparently, there were two dogs that were actually accused of being familiars of witches. One was executed after being shot, and another was cleared when a villager claimed it wasn't bewitched.
Huh?
Yeah. So apparently the witches were bewitching the dogs.
I think we need to execute those people that executed the other people.
Wait, oh my god. I don't know if any of these facts are real, but I've
There's
like
more?
heard some of them. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. So some people believe, at least like scholars, were speculating that the role of ergot poisoning was at play here. That's a fungus that grows on rye, which is, the bread.
Yeah.
And that could have caused the initial symptoms of bewitchment, such as the convulsions, hallucinations, and paranoia. So, like, that's not a universally accepted theory, but I mean, it's interesting that that could be what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is just baffling.
Mm-hmm.
The
And
shit
then
that people do, man.
very much that, yeah. Like, this is insane. So you know the witch cake that I mentioned earlier when talking about Tituba. So apparently early in the like hysteria, like back when it was first ramping up. So they made the witch cake, right?
Hmm.
And that was made by, of course, mixing the rye flour with the urine of the people that were thought to be bewitched. The cake was then fed to a dog with the belief that the dog would identify the witch by their reaction. And apparently, this bizarre practice preceded most of the formal accusation. That's crazy. So it was really actually like a dog accusing the witch.
Which is actually insane.
Can you imagine calling a fucking dog up to the witness stand,
And they're like, woof, woof, woof.
feeding it cake, and then if the dog freaked out, they're like, all right, there you have it, folks. That's a fucking witch.
And then everyone's
Like,
saying,
dude,
yeah, I agree.
like, what? Like, the jury? Oh my, I can't believe, oh my, there wasn't, well, okay, to be fair, you couldn't be critical, because if you disagreed, you were a witch. They were in a really fucked up situation.
Yeah, I mean, that you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's
Which is, I mean, it's
insane.
terrible, but like, it's true. I just couldn't imagine like being in that time. It's messed up, and I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I've found out that I have a hatred that I didn't know that I had of really shitty things happening to people in the past. Yeah, they passed away like 500 years ago, which is so bonkers. And obviously, they wouldn't be around today, but they could have had a full life. 20 years old, 12 years old. I don't know, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrible.
Apparently, when Giles Corey died, he cursed Salem in the sense of he said, "Damn you, I curse you and Salem."
Hmm.
Maybe he was a witch.
That's just messed up. What a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do in that situation? Like,
If
if
I
you
was
know.
accused,
Well, no, not well. Yeah, that too. But like, what would you do if you like found your friends or people in your village they were being executed because they just didn't agree with some philosophies or whatever?
the person I
Like,
am today, I would obviously stand up for them and be like, "Fuck,
yeah,
you guys are fucking insane. Like, shut the fuck up." But obviously, then I would get accused. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, putting my mind in the headspace of where everyone was back in Salem, I would simply have to keep my fucking mouth shut until I started getting accused myself. But even
Yeah.
then, I mean, nothing I said would have made any sort of difference. It was either, their head or mine. And even then, if it was their head, it could also be mine as well. Anyway, even if I kept my mouth shut, if I had any sort of beef with anybody, I mean,
I would
you'd
just
be
left.
accused. Fucking yo.
It's the 1600s, 1500s, 1400s. Who cares? There's plenty of land out there.
Pack my
Uh,
bags, take my horse 5 towns over. See ya.
if you even own a horse,
I probably would have.
I think you definitely would have owned a horse.
I love
you would have,
horses. They're so
you,
cool.
bro. You would probably own two horses and had like a caravan.
Oh, at like a little fucking like Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
Get in my buggy. Let's go for a ride. I'm fucking weak.
We're never coming back here.
See ya. I wonder if like they would chase him if they tried to skip town. Cause like as soon as people
Mm.
started looking at me the wrong way, I'd be out.
Yeah, I wonder like why. I don't know. That's terrible. It's all terrible. I hope everyone is in a less terrible circumstance than that nowadays. And I've learned that there's a lot of fucked shit in history over the years of like learning about history, but this is like one of those really messed up ones. Because it's literally like people that weren't really doing a whole lot wrong, if anything, and they're being executed. And that's just terrible. So, yeah, what a light, fun topic.
I
We're
mean,
very good at
hey,
those.
it was like historical, so I'm not like mad about it. I learned a lot of shit that I didn't know about Salem. And when we go visit, we can't go visit Salem, Massachusetts. We have to go to Danvers, Massachusetts, because there was a geographic shift. So everyone that visits Salem, Massachusetts, you're visiting the wrong place. It's
Yeah.
called Danvers. You should be visiting Danvers if you want to visit the Salem Village.
That's right.
Just a PSA.
That's right. And maybe like if the podcast really takes off, I think we should go on over to Danvers, Massachusetts.
I agree.
Find if they have like a charity donation thing, and then like do an episode, and all the proceeds go to that.
The upkeep of the town, that'd be really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I think that's the plan if the podcast ever takes off.
I wonder if we could donate to like the museum. Museums usually take donations.
That's
think.
true. What if that's messed up? What if we were like, hey, I have this piece of history from Danvers slash Salem during that time period. Like, what would they be like? Oh,
And it's
like-
just my vape.
Could you imagine? That'd
This
be
was a
messed up.
crucial part of witchcraft. I heard all the witches were hitting this shit. Take a smack, bro.
Take a smack.
No, let's fuck
No,
up. I'm
but
sorry.
For real, for real though, we should do that. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Midnight Oil, please give us a rating on Spotify or whatever platform you listen on. Go on over to the Patreon. It's going to be in the description. We are doing a lot of fun stuff on the Patreon. It's starting to finally pick up. We're doing extra episodes every week. And Tab, do you have anything you want to plug?
Go follow our Instagram, and by the time this episode is up, we should also have a BlueSky. That's like a
Twitter alternative.
Yeah. So
Get
hit
off
us up
Twitter.
there.
It's a terrible place for the brain.
Brain rot. I mean, so
Yeah,
is
it's
like
actual brain rot.
probably BlueSky, but I don't know. It seems pretty
All
nice.
social media is brain rot, but
Honestly,
it
yeah.
does seem really nice. So
Yeah.
if
I've
you
been on
want
there.
a little break from the
Want a break from the ads? Sorry.
Want a break from the ads? But yeah, go check us out on Patreon. Go check us out on socials. It's Midnight Oil Entertainment on pretty much everything.
Yerp.
And yeah, the next follower we get, we're gonna celebrate. We've been at 14 for like 2 weeks. So if you've made it this far in the episode,
We
go
love you.
follow, and we love you guys very, very much. It's been a lot of fun recording some podcast episodes. I feel like I won't get super into it, but if it's like a really nice way to kind of express yourself,
Yeah.
and I feel really good when I do it. So
If you want to start a podcast, dude, start a podcast and then link
yeah,
it to us. We'll do an episode
Yeah.
on your podcast.
yeah, we'll actually join your podcast and have you
Yeah.
on our podcast and shout out the podcast.
Hey.
Hey, small creators supporting small creators.
On God. Speaking of shoutouts, though, we got to do our Patreon shoutouts.
Yes.
Yeah, so shout out to the first one, Zaid/Agron. What a homie. And then shout out to our second one, which is Dakota. That's Keeg's partner. What another homie. And then our third one is me. Shout out to me, straight up. I'm just trying to boost our numbers on God. Play. You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you too. I love to support small communities. Thank you. We appreciate you as well. Anyways.
I appreciate you.
Anyways. I just had a moment with myself.
No, that's good. Well, I think that about wraps us up. We've released these at 8:00 in the morning. Do you think at some point we should release them
At night? Because we're
at
saying
night?
good night.
Yeah, we're like good night, and it's like someone coming home from third shift, and they're like, "Oh yeah, man, thanks." And literally 98% of the rest of the audience is like, "Bro, I'm going to work right now."
I mean, we know that like third shifters are probably more prominent to listen to podcasts anyway, so.
That's true.
Because I mean, what is there to do at your job? Working late
That's
night hours?
so true.
You're probably loading packages, probably driving semi-truck. You're probably working in a factory, chilling. We appreciate you. We see you. We acknowledge you. But also, we see our early bird gets the worms, too.
That's
Look
right.
at you. grinding on the way to work, driving in your car right now.
Vroom vroom.
We love you too.
Shout out, shout out workers.
Shout
Shout
out to our
out
mid shifters. We see you
late
working the
shifters.
mids.
The episode should have been done like 5-10 minutes ago.
It's probably
this
gonna get cut
this
anyway.
this is us. This is what. No. Keep it in. Keep it in. This is what our pre-shows kind of sound like, except with some like tangible, usually stories and stuff. So if you like just the goofy vibe, then go check out the Patreon. So serious. I'm so serious. I'm so serious. The Patreon is going to become our bread and butter, and I'm not going to say what it is, but we recorded a fun little project, and it should be going up. Tab.
By the time that you're listening to this podcast, it should at least already be edited. So I would say next week,
Cool.
by the time that this podcast is up.
Keep an eye on the Patreon, and yeah, maybe we will tweak the schedule a little bit. But for now, it's 8 a.m. and we're gonna say nighties.
Good night.